We are live. Andy, hi.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And I created a banner. So just in case you're wondering, we're talking about, does your significant other define who you
I
are?
love
So
it. I love it.
yeah. So I can hide it again if you want, but for now I'll hide it. But I'll just pop it back in now and again so people know what we're talking about. But
Sure.
yeah, so somehow we're matching again. Our color scheme is good. It's good. I like
Right? It's almost like
it.
there's some sort of synchronization or something.
Woo! So, hello everyone. My name is Leslie Godet, and I am a mindset and emotional awareness coach for women. I help my clients around mindset issues, so specifically around their emotional triggers, because a lot of the time, what we believe and how we think and we feel, they're kind of playing off one another. And if you allow your emotions to be the in the driver's seat, you will find yourself having those emotional responses that you'll have to go back and fix later. So that's what I help my clients with. Andy?
Yeah, control issues. I help people with control issues, mostly guys, although I've been delving into helping a few women lately too. Um, Control issues, not necessarily people who are too controlling, although that is one version of the people that I help, but also people who find a lack of control in their lives or find that their lives are out of control in some fashion. People with control issues. And I've been finding recently that takes on a lot of different flavors. So yeah, that's who I am. Also known as the unconditional coach, and sideways known as the midnight coach. I go by many names. Most people just call me Andy.
Well, Andy, it's awesome to be with you tonight. As I said earlier, people, if you didn't get a chance to check it out, we are talking about, does your significant other define who you are? This was a topic that came to me. I was thinking about it because I've talked to people and they have, especially, well, women mainly, and how their partners have a lifestyle that they have, and then their lifestyle, and they want to know, is how they are showing up in the world being defined by, or how their partner is showing up in the world define who they are in the eyes of other people. And so I thought it was kind of cool that we could talk about this topic tonight.
Yeah, and actually, when you brought the topic up for me, it actually came up from my client's point of view too. A lot of my guys, their wives define who they are based on some character flaw the guy has. You're an alcoholic, you're a sex addict, you're a liar or a cheater or a so often and many of the guys will actually pick up and wear that identity. Which is one of the things, obviously, that I help them with, right? So does your partner define who you are? Really has a lot of connotations, a lot of possibilities, and in some cases, yeah, I think they do define who we are, and in other cases, I think we resist those definitions, and sometimes we resist them for reasons that don't really give us what we're looking for, right? Mm-hmm. Am I a lawyer's husband or a lawyer's wife? Is that a bad thing? Oh. Am I a recovering alcoholic? Is that a bad thing? Sometimes it is. If I'm a neuroscientist and I'm married to a famous lawyer, then it might be something I don't want to identify as being the lawyer's spouse. Maybe I want to be identified as the neuroscientist. And it doesn't have to go that big. It can be, you're the plumber and I'm the receptionist. Or I'm the janitor and you're the, I'm not even sure. They don't have to be grandiose identities. But we often do identify ourselves by our spouse. And there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of conversation here. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah. So I think it goes deep too for some people, because it also in their social standing or in their financial standing, whether if they're poor, whether they're middle class, if that even exists anymore, whether they're the 1%. How are you defined? Because you get You hear that there's that saying, the trophy wife. So
Mhm.
that means that she is being defined by her husband, who he is, what he
Yeah.
does,
Yeah.
what he brings to the table, and she is just considered um, an accessory.
Mhm.
So I think it really depends. I think it depends on if you decide to adopt that
Right.
as your truth, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and I think maybe a lot of people do, like you were saying, a lot of the men that you work with, they are being told by their significant other that this is who they are. So they're taking that tag and they're applying it to themselves and they're
Mhm.
owning it as their truth. Doesn't necessarily have to be true. Or it could be a part of maybe their behavior of what they're
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah.
But does that really make a person the
Right.
behaviors?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, can a person change? If a person, for example, is an alcoholic, that is just something that they have. That is an addiction that they have. And if they go through whatever they need to do to help themselves not drink anymore, are they still labeled? I feel like, are they still defined as being that, an alcoholic? Yes, because people say you go to AA and they always say I'm an alcoholic, but can they not just be someone who has dealt with alcoholism, and it
Right.
doesn't have to be a label? And
Right.
that's the thing that I've always kind of struggled with when people get labeled things, because almost to feel like it's not really fair.
Right.
Again, the label of someone being, it just came to me and it went through my mind real quick. What was I was going to say? But it's like, it's just being labeled like anything, like any type
Yeah.
of label that you get. Is it necessarily the truth of who you are, or is it
Right.
just something that you are adopting in your life right now and that you can change?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, you do have options. It is, we have to choose. I mean, is this the identity you want to have? Is this the identity you choose to have? And is it possible that maybe um, that it's because you don't have a strong enough identity of your own, like an identity you really relate to, that you really embrace? I'm a mother. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a lawyer's wife. I'm not a, whatever he is or whatever identity he gives me. I'm a mother, or I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm a great person. I'm a volunteer. Those are identities you can choose to wear. I'm financially successful. I'm emotionally healthy. I'm whatever identities you want to wear. And those can, and just like the negative identities we wear, the positive ones can also be related to activities or actions that we take. Oftentimes, we wear negative identities based on an action, like an addict, but we don't give ourselves the same consideration with our positive actions. Um, I'm a volunteer, right? A lot of people who don't, a lot of people who do volunteer, but not for nationally recognized organizations. They just volunteer at the local bottle drive for their kids' function. They don't call themselves a volunteer. They don't put it on their resume, or they don't you know hold that identity somehow. Or a lot of people choose the negative identities, but they don't choose the positive ones. And I wonder if that isn't because what they're looking for is a something they really relate to, that has purpose and passion and drive behind it, and that's the identity that a lot of us are missing. And when we don't have something like that, we choose whatever identity somebody decides to place upon us, whether it's good or bad. Well, I don't know what I am. Maybe you know what I am better than I do, so I'll just choose whatever you think I am, right? And that's where I think a lot of us who get into this personal development world, we do eventually decide to choose, this is who I am. It's actually part of the business plan. We have to, in order to help people, we have to be able to tell people who we help and what we do. So we choose an identity. And that in that choice, and just in that simple choice of choosing who I am, there's power and authority and respect for myself. And other people tend to give me some of that respect. Right? So I think a lot of it has to do with, do we have an identity of our own first?
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's scary for people to actually choose something for themselves, right? Because I know, as an example, you have maybe two people, they're doing completely different things. Like, so when you meet, say, for example, a power couple, but the power couple, one could be a lawyer and one could be a doctor. So whose identity are they being? Who are they adopting? Whose identity? Who do they show up as when they are brought into an environment? For example, if they go into an environment where it's, I love your cup, an environment where people are having a dinner party, say, for example, and so it's the doctor and his wife. If it's a function that she's bringing her spouse to, she's the lawyer who has a doctor husband. So it's almost like it depends on the environment that we're in too, that can play into what our identities are, which is kind of interesting to me. That you can't be considered the doctor and the lawyer going to either event, but you're considered either the doctor's wife going to the doctor's medical association dinner or something, or going to her big lawyer's dinner. He's her doctor husband. It's fascinating to me because you get labeled, and it's different groups of people will label you, and I don't know necessarily if it's meant to be harmful, but it depends. I think when it comes to labeling people with negative things like the alcoholic or the drug addict or the sex addict or the narcissist, or all of these things that might be negative, then that people consider to be negative, then I guess what comes into play there is she the alcoholic's wife? Is she the alcoholic husband's wife, or is he the alcoholic husband's? Is he the alcoholic wife's husband? Is she married? Is her husband the narcissist? So does that mean that people look at her as being like, oh, how could she be with someone like that? So she must be like him, or vice versa. Her husband is an alcoholic. She must have issues too, or vice versa. And so people it depends, I think. I mean, you take it to a different place, I guess people are put into different groupings, but I think it's still wherever you are, a group of people might even define you. You might not define yourself, but that's why I thought the question was fascinating for me, because you might be defined by the grouping of people that you are surrounding yourself with. As an example, I'm a coach. And now, I'm very excited. I'm a best-selling author internationally, by the way, as well. Thank you. So does that mean if I went to an event, like a book signing, that my husband is the husband of an international bestseller, or is he just my husband? Do you know what I mean? Does my successes or his non-successes, or his successes and my non-successes define each of us in some capacity in whichever grouping of people we're in? And I think that's where the actual labeling comes from, is a group of people will label you this, or they'll label you that. And it's not necessarily that we're putting the labels on, unless, of course, like you were saying, the clients that you work with, they have their relationship labels that they give to each other. But I don't know if that's necessarily being defined as much as it would be in a public setting. Now it's like, oh, there's so and so, her husband's an alcoholic, so then feel sorry for her because her life must be hell because of that. Whereas if it was, oh, there's so and so, her husband's a doctor, so you have to feel great for her, she's so lucky. Do you know what I mean? It's like, really, it doesn't mean that the guy who's going through some hard times isn't a good guy. He just needs and vice versa, the same for the woman. So it just fascinates me, this topic. That's why I wanted to bring it bring it up and have us have this discussion on it.
Yeah, I like the first reference you made. Like, when we go to social events, it depends on why we're going, and often we do associate the spouse with the person who was the original invitation to the event. And oftentimes we take on, as the spouse, we take on those identities kind of out of respect, because the event's not about me, right? The event isn't, I mean, I might be the doctor to my lawyer wife, but tonight I'm a lawyer's husband, right? Because it's not about me being a doctor. Nobody cares that I'm a doctor at this event, unless, you know, somebody needs a doctor all of a sudden, which hopefully they won't. But the idea is at this particular event, I'm the lawyer's husband, so that's enough, you know. And I don't need to shine a light on the fact that I'm also successful. I can let her have the limelight. So in those situations, I think it's okay. It's almost a sign of respect to my spouse to let the event be about them. Let people put me in a box. And from the people perspective, I think most people find it easier to put someone in a box because they don't want to have to remember all the details of every party, of all the couples. You know, they already know some of the people based on some of the things. And, you know, and if we're at a social event, I already know, you know, this person or that person, or at least most people who come here are part of this event for some reason. So you might be the spouse of the person who comes, and that's okay too. It just makes it easier for me to try and remember, oh, you're the husband of the lawyer. That's great. Oh, you're also a doctor? Well, I don't care. Right? I mean, that's an oversimplification of the conversations, but that's often the case. And just out of simplicity for the people trying to meet everybody else, and out of respect for the person that I went with, I will usually defer to whatever their identity is. Like I remember going to events with my wife as she was an insurance adjuster. So we would go to Christmas parties at her company, and I would just be the husband of her insurance adjuster, even though I clearly had an identity of my own. You know, I was doing all kinds of things myself, and none of that mattered at that particular event. Now, if she went to my Christmas parties, then she was the wife of whatever I was at the time, right? So under those circumstances, I think it's okay. It's a sign of respect, but only if that is the intention. Like, I don't think it's right for a husband to demand that a wife be only that. If a husband goes to a party and it's a doctor's organization, and he is the doctor, and he brings his lawyer wife, and somebody starts talking to her about being a lawyer, I don't think he should shut down the conversation. He should allow her to have, you know, out of the sign respect. She's allowed to respect him, but then he's also allowed to respect her. And that's what respectful relationships look like. It's when we choose to wear identities that we don't like, that we don't want, that I think we come into a problem. That we choose to wear personalities and identifications and put into boxes and stuck into groups and being identified by this characteristic or that characteristic or this action or that action. Or maybe it was just a thing that you happen to be there for. Like we just recently went through a 9/11 a couple of weeks ago, another 9/11 celebration, because it was 20 years since 9/11 happened. So a lot of the passengers on those planes were identified as passengers on those planes, not people, not doctors and lawyers and mothers and children, but passengers on those planes, right? And in those kind of categories, in those kinds of situations, it's not a bad thing to be identified by that, unless they had some significant to do with those events. You know, if I'm a passenger on the plane, but I happen to be the one person who stopped my plane from actually doing any damage, now I'm not just a passenger on the plane. I'm somebody who participated in preventing damage, right? Whatever that happened to be. Same with the rescue services that were on scene for that. Like, most of them are just identified as rescue services, firemen and, you know, medics and all that sort of stuff. But every once in a while, there will be one that showed up for doing something particularly special. So for those kinds of things, it's simpler to put people in a box. And the problem, I think, problem comes in when we're wearing identities that we don't actually want, or that don't give us results we like. And another problem that I just kind of thought of is we often, as service providers, whether that's coaches or medical professionals or any kind of service provider, we might put people we serve in a box. I serve guys with control issues. Well, that's virtually everybody on the planet. Everybody's got some version of a control issue. So what does that actually mean? Am I putting people in a box? And I kind of have to in order to do marketing and messaging and advertising and that sort of stuff. But at the same time, am I leaving somebody out? Am I missing somebody that I could be? So there's that whole end of things too. Oftentimes research is done on a specific group of people when the research might be relevant to a whole different set of people, right? So there's all kinds of, are we identified? And back to the topic, are we identified by our partner? Sometimes we can be identified by something our partner has done. The husband or wife of somebody famous. How many celebrities do we know, have you heard of, that are married to somebody who's not famous? Right? And they are just the spouse of that celebrity in most circles, especially in the public eye. Right? So, yeah, in some cases, I think we are. And in some of those cases, like public events and venues and things like that, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. But we, as the public who puts people in boxes, can take it too far pretty easily. Has anybody ever heard of Britney Spears' boyfriend or Britney Spears' husband? Nobody cares, right? They're Britney Spears' people. That's all we care about. We don't know who their names are or who they are or anything like that. She's the famous one, so she's the one that we identify them with, right? So we, as the people who are putting people in these boxes, could use some compassion and actually care about who these people are. Right. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. So I want to bring it back though. Now let's get back to more on our topic, which is about our really close circle, which is our significant other, our close relationship. And you said something which was one of the reasons why I prompted this conversation, was if it's something that they have done, does that define who you are? And I'm just curious about that, because there's a lot of people who've done things. I mean, I'm sure we've all done things in our lives that we're not proud of, but when you're with somebody else, does that define them? If you do something not particularly great, does that actually have blowback on them? Because I kind of think that it does, and I'll tell you why. And I don't even know all of the details, but let's just get into one of the shows that I watch on TV, which I've been taking a particular interest in, which is The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And one of the wives has a husband who's a famous attorney who's going through some issues and financial issues. And a lot of her castmates are questioning her knowledge, are questioning, and she's being questioned obviously by other people about how much she really knew, how much she didn't know, was she involved, all of that. And so that made me start thinking around. I think that was one of the reasons too why I thought this topic would be interesting, because you have someone famous now. They both are different. She is an entertainer, he is an attorney, but they both are quite famous in their spaces. And but I don't think that if he was to be, and this is just my observation, but I would think that if they were in a function of his, that she would be probably expected to be showing up as his wife, not her entertainment type of, like, her business. Her business would take way back seat. But I also think that when she goes to her functions, even though it would be her function, they're not together anymore, but that he still would show up very powerfully as his attorney self. So he would be wanting that out in the public, that he was the attorney. So, but my question is, does So if say you are someone who isn't really, you really don't know what your significant other is up to, and they do something, and now you're thinking, okay, does this define who I am? Not specifically what other people are thinking, but internally, because this is what I'm talking about. How does this is the meat of it? How would someone who might be rocked by their significant other doing something that is so completely against maybe their own values that it makes them feel like they should start questioning, does that define my who I am? Is that really who I am? Allow, because I'm with somebody who does things like this. So that was my question. That was really why I was so wanting to talk about this, because yes, I know we started in the beginning. We were talking about how externally people will put you into these boxes. And yes, sometimes it's easier to just say, like all the passengers on a plane. But if someone stands out, or all of the service people who showed up, all of like the medical and the police officers and the firemen. But if someone stands out, I get that. But I'm talking now, let's go closer to home and let's talk about the internal, because now we talk about the internal voice. Does this is now you start questioning you as a person, you start questioning yourself. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's actually kind of the direction I wanted to go with the conversation when I was talking about the negative identities that our spouse gives us as well. It's much the same kind of concept. If our spouse does something we didn't know about. One great example I can think of that I've seen a lot in media and heard actually from clients is, if my spouse cheats on me and I didn't know, what does that say about me? Right? What identity do I have because I didn't see that coming, because I didn't see it happening? And that isn't even an identity that he or she puts on me necessarily. It's an identity that I choose based on something that he or she did. And those identities can be actually the most harmful, because we blame the other person for the thing that they did, but we don't take responsibility for the identity we give ourselves as a result of what they did. And that can be dangerous. Now, not everybody does that. Of course, there are some people who can let other people have their actions and go through their healing and that sort of stuff. But when we choose an identity based on somebody else's actions, and that's actually where I was getting to with those other identities. One of the articles I've been writing lately is this concept of a porn addict. A lot of the guys that I know who call themselves porn addicts never created that identity for themselves. There are very few who decided, I actually have a problem here and I think I need some help with it. Most of them are in relationship with somebody who doesn't like how much they use porn, so they call them a porn addict. Or maybe the guy decides, I'm a porn addict because I can't stop, because she needs me to quit, because she needs me to this. And so he calls himself, I just can't stop, so I must be an addict. It's the same thing with alcohol or with drugs. Some people who use alcohol and drugs don't want to stop. Those things are a solution to a problem for them. And until they can find a better solution, that's the best solution they have. But somebody they're in relationship with doesn't like that they do those things, so they choose the identity rather than stopping doing the thing. And those are dangerous, right? So yeah, that is the crux of the conversation, right? It's great that we started out in high level, wonderful, pretty little things, celebrity type stuff. But let's get deep into it. Like you said, this is the thing we're here to talk about. We're talking about relationships in this series. And identities that we have in our relationships, identities we choose based on our partner, can have a major effect on the rest of our life. I know guys whose spouse called them a porn addict or an alcoholic 20 or 25 years ago. They divorced that person 20 or 25 years ago, and they still call themselves this, and they never chose it for themselves. They never decided I'm this. Just somebody told them they are, so I must be, and therefore they're in recovery for those things, but they keep relapsing. They keep having a problem. They keep not dealing with the underneath issue, because clearly the addiction is the issue, or the action that they were doing is the issue, when that was never the issue in the first place. So those identities can be harmful, for sure. That's what I'm writing about now.
Wow. Yeah, and I never even thought that even though our significant other can do something that we could start thinking about as defining as like an action that they take, but it's also harmful if we automatically put a label on our significant other based on maybe one, something that's not even really an actual thing. Someone who might like to have a few beers on the weekend, but the spouse decides to call him an alcoholic, and then he decides to adopt that as his defining like characteristic. So, like, where's that? That's not really something that, and of course, if he's not drinking through the week, but he only has a few beers on the weekend, does that make him an alcoholic because she chose to call him that, and now he's decided to adopt it as his own because she said it was? Or is there something else? Of course, this could be an emotional thing. It could also, I mean, again, I talk a lot about emotions, and it could go back to, this could have been they could have been defined as something as when they were younger. Men have feelings too. So, there could have been a definition defined as something growing up, being told that they were this or they were that. And that could be coming from mom, as an example, this was obviously when I was 20, I dated somebody who he was terrified of his mom, and for good reason, because there were some issues. But she was coming into town, and he broke out in like warts, literally all over his hands. And it was because of the stress. So obviously she did mental, you know, beating on him. And so now that was what he took with him. She defined him when he was younger, that it resonated even more so when he got older. He couldn't shake that. So I think it's harmful if we don't, it's the words, we need to learn to choose our words, but we also have to recognize that, you know, defining someone based on our feelings, based on an action or an event that happened around something that we're not so happy around, and then defining someone as that isn't really fair. It's more about talk about the action, what was done, and move on from that. If they repeat it, then there's some, maybe if they keep repeating these same types of things, then maybe you can start having that conversation around, like, why are you continuously doing this action? But you can't really define someone as something unless they are really, that's something that they're really doing. Like, you can't just name it and then someone, like you said, 20 years later is holding it as his truth when that's not even really his issue. So, but I know that when someone does something, and this is just from the female perspective, when a significant other does something, I know women. Well, for myself, I'm a very emotional person. I'm very sensitive, and so sometimes I will look at something that gets done and think, does that how other, not so much other people, but is that who I am as a person to allow that action? And so I believe that a lot of people think that way, that because someone does something, who am I? Like you said, who am I? If this person does this, what does that say about who I am? Like, if I say I have specific values, this is who I am, how I live. but then the person that I'm with does these types of things. Am I really truly who I say I am? Or am I like, because that can make a person start to pause and think, oh, I don't know. They start asking those questions. And so it's still, I still am not 100% certain. And I love having these conversations because I think it's trying to like figure it out. I like figuring these things out, and it doesn't mean like I'm going to like figure out the holy grail answer, but I think if we can get closer and closer to that answer before we end this conversation, it would be probably very helpful for anyone who hops on and either listens now or listens later, just to kind of figure out some steps and figuring that out. So I'm going to give you back the mic and see what you have to say.
That's a great point of view. I love that point of view. If I tolerate them doing something, or if I put up with or accept or condone them doing something that's against my values, what does that say about me? And I believe that's really the core of this conversation. What does that say about me? Because most of the relationship memes I see all over social media are around that subject. If you blah, 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 treat me blah, 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 I'm blah, 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 and therefore I will not anymore. But the other side of the question is, can you be in relationship with somebody who doesn't share your values or doesn't share all of your values? Do you have to be in relationship with somebody who shares all of your values, or can they share some and have some that are different? And if you can be in relationship with someone who has some values that are different, which values are allowed to be different and which ones are not? And the extreme end of that is, if you can be in relationship with somebody whose values are different than your own, is that called compassion? Can you really love somebody who doesn't do what you want them to do, who doesn't live the values you want to live, but they live their own values? And again, it comes down to which values you're willing to let them not live up to and which ones you're not. You know, each of us has a certain set of core values that are very, very important, and some values that are kind of important, and some values that we prefer, but we'll let other people have preferences over ours. So listing those, actually having a conscious choice as to which those are. You know, for example, if I'm in a relationship with somebody who, I don't know, wants to live in the bedroom and make love 17 hours a day and sleep for the rest, I might have a problem with that because I got other things I want to do. Right? 7 hours I could probably tolerate because that gives me 10 hours to do something else. But just to make it light of the story for a moment, I mean, there's if somebody has values that are different than mine, can I tolerate that? Well, it's something that I've been exploring in my own personal life since my ex-wife left 5 years ago. And there's actually been a few ladies in my life in the last few months that I've said to myself, could I date her? You know, a few ladies that are single and available and you know, we've presented some kind of a chemistry, some kind of an interest. And, you know, chemistry is wonderful, attraction is wonderful, but is there value combinations that work? Is there value combinations that don't work? You know, and so this is a very much a conversation that I've delved into recently with myself, with my own personal life, is which values do I need them or desire them or crave them to share, and which ones am I willing to have a little wiggle room, and which ones do I really not have a lot of preference over? You know, there are different values. And in order for us to be properly in relationships, we need to have a list of at least those few important ones. And the more of the lesser values we have listed, the happier we can become in relationship. So that's my thoughts on the subject. It's about what's actually important to you.
Yeah. I think, so here's a question that might throw you a little bit. because I get that what you're saying, because if you're in the beginning stages of a relationship or are looking for a relationship, then you can actually ask those questions about that very topic, like, could I date this person? Could I be in a relationship long term with this person? Do they share similar some values as I do? Are they enough that we could have some kind of relationship? And that's great in the beginning. But what if, and let's just say for all intents and purposes, you have someone who is in a long term relationship and decides to go on this self development journey, changes who they are, and changes who they are for in a good way, because maybe they just wanted to feel better about themselves, to start really living a better life, to start thinking better thoughts, to start saying a lot better things, more healthy things, being more grateful, and all of that. So now you have the relationship that might have been here, and now this, not that this person is going higher, or let's do the left hand because it looks like it's right. But the person over here on the left is okay. They're now changing, and they're no longer on the same playing field, and now they're different, and now their values are not the same. They're not meeting. So how does a person now, when they're at that stage, how do you, because this comes down to expectations, right? How do you now have those conversations? Because I think that's the big thing, because this person over here, up here, and this person over here, this person might be resentful that this person is different, that this person might not like that this person is different, and this isn't the person. They're no longer the same people that got together or got married or whatever that is. So how do they, because now your significant other, if they're still down here with behaviors and all of that thing that was, I don't know if the word tolerate, but it was just a lifestyle that never really was on your radar. But now, because you're here, you're no longer thinking those same thoughts and doing those same things. That's where I think the question comes in. Does that person define who you are? Because you might have leveled to here, you're different. And so that's where I think a lot of the talk comes in, like the inner talk starts happening, because, well, I'm here. I've done all the work. I'm living this life I want. I'm actually a much better person, and yet my significant other is over here and doesn't want, I don't know if he or she wants to change or understands it, but we don't see eye to eye. So I think that was really kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about, because I think when people go through these, because this is now out in the mainstream, coaching, self-development, self-love, how do people in that have been together here and now one is different, how do they manage? And that question about the definition of, if you're here, does what you do define who they are, or does what they do define who you are? You know what I'm saying? So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
First of all, that is the crux of most relationship coaching. One person goes through growth and the other person doesn't. And the person who went through growth often goes to a relationship coach and says, fix my partner, because that's ever going to work, ever. Right? So the common advice by the masses in that situation is break up. And it's one of the reasons I got into coaching, because I hate that advice. I think it's the dumbest advice ever. There is a way to have those relationships last. Actually, there's multiple ways. The other partner can grow. I mean, that's the most preferred way. The other partner can grow. The other way is the person who's been doing the growth can learn to either make their own damn choices and make their own identity and choose their own identity based on what they want, who they are, what they think they are, and let their partner have their identity. And in social situations, like we were talking about at the start of the conversation, in social situations, respect each other and give up your identity for that person in those kind of situations. But otherwise, have separate identities. Like in a lot of situations, our partner doesn't need to be involved. Like we don't go to that many social events that we need to wear their identity all the time, or they need to wear ours. It's, an occasional thing. And most of the time, you can be two separate people. The doctor can be a doctor, and the lawyer can be a lawyer, and they don't have to interact as each other's spouses 95% of the time. And they can be individual professionals who just happen to go home to the same house and be in relationship and even really actually love each other. And they can be two different people. It's will the person who's doing the growth, will they allow their partner to be who they want to be? And even if what they want to be is some corrupted, broken individual who's got all kind of growth that person could go through, even if you can see the solutions to their problems clear as day, and trust me, I've got friends in this situation. I can see their problems clear as day. Can you still love them? At the end of the day, can you go home, go into the bedroom, and be intimate with that person as them, as you, the new growth, aware, expanded person that you are, and your partner, wherever they're at, can you meet them where they're at, and can they meet you where you're at? Is there still a desire between the two of you, between the husband and the wife, between the two people? Is there a desire to try and meet each other there? When the desire goes, that's when the relationship goes. As long as the desire's there, any gap can be bridged. The desire is helpful if there's a desire on both sides, because it's much easier to build a bridge from both sides. It can be done from only one, but it's much, much easier if both sides are building that bridge. So if both people want to meet each other where they're at, if the husband still wants to meet the wife and the wife still wants to meet the husband, great. Then as each of them change and evolve, which we all do, then there will be a desire and an effort to come together, to understand, okay, you've grown. I don't like how you've grown, but you've grown. And I'm willing to concede that you've grown in the way you choose, because I love you and I want you to have freedom of choice in this relationship. So it really comes down to, we as the growing partner, can we tolerate that they're not? One of the reasons I got into coaching is because I want to help specifically guys whose partners have been reading hundreds of self-help books and he's just so damn expanded. I can stand it. That is a quote from a client at one point. Help those guys to see their partner for the beautiful woman she still is, the loving, compassionate person she still is, even if she doesn't necessarily like some of his habits the way she tolerated them before. But she used to like them. No, she never did. She just didn't care so much. And now she does. She's still trying to love you, or she's not. And can you still try and love her? That's what I got into the coaching for in the first place, to help people to grow and change when the opportunity arises. The last point I want to make, and it's a quick one, is this is the reason so many people choose not to grow. This is the number one reason so many people choose not to grow, because of how many relationships they're scared they'll lose, how many very significant relationships they're scared they'll lose if they grow. So many people choose not to grow because of that. And is that a good enough reason to not grow? That's my question back to you.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, is that a good enough reason not to grow? Well, I mean, that's only a question that each individual can answer for themselves because it depends on what type of life they want to live. But I think I mean, one of the things I think that also goes with the common denominator, I think, with desire is like communication. Because, like you said, people grow. You might have a person who's gone through the self growth, has gone through this journey, they've changed. And you have to want to change, obviously, but they've changed and they're now a different person. They're more, they feel better about themselves. They're grateful for all of the things, and most of the time they're showing gratitude. And when you can do that, it is liberating, but it also, I think, is for the person who's not going through the same journey, scary, because now they may be thinking, and it's not even having that conversation yet with them about it, but they could be afraid that because you find yourself in this different place of how you feel about yourself, that your feelings are going to change for them. So that could be part of the pushback from somebody in a relationship like that. But I also think that there has to be that communicating. So the communication, I should say. So if you have someone who's gone through self growth and you have someone who hasn't, and the person who's gone through it is getting pushback from the person who is not willing to, or is just not, who's uncertain, or thinks it's a bunch of woo woo, whatever that is, it's still being able to communicate and having. I think for me, I would say is this: look, you might not understand all the things that I'm doing. You might not understand all the things I've learned about myself, and the things that I'm changing about myself, how I think, how I speak, the things I read, the things that interest me, all that might have changed. And you might not understand that, but I'm asking you to meet me here and accept that this is who I am. And on the flip side, as I went through this journey for myself, it wasn't necessarily that I was going to turn to you and try to fix you, because this was for me. And I think when they have that conversation that this was purely for myself, then maybe that might alleviate some of that pressure. Oh, you mean you did this for you? Well, yes, of course, I did this for me first, but so that I could have a better relationship with you, because I feel better about myself. And that typically will spark something in this other person to maybe want to grow their own way, whatever that looks like. But it doesn't have to be the same way that this person went through their growth. And I think that is, if people could understand that, it's not about, oh, I went through this self love journey, I went through this self growth journey, and these are the things that I did, so I'm expecting you to do it. No, because these were my choices that I decided, the path I decided. But I did this so I could feel better about myself, so I could start living my life feeling better about myself, so that I could then show up in my relationship with you where I'm more confident about the space that I am occupying with you, that we're together and I'm a better human being. I feel good about the person I am as I show up in the relationship with you. That helps me to be this way towards you, more loving, more understanding, more accepting, right? And when they can hear that, a lot of the time, and what ends up happening is that the communication gets better, and there's that growth. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go through a self-love or self-growth journey, but the growth of communication, I think, is the biggest thing. And if you can keep that desire and the open-mindedness to be able to communicate, then I think that would be a recipe that would keep relationships maybe stronger, or at least together. And if it doesn't work, okay, fine, it doesn't work. But you can't just like walk away. I don't know. I don't believe just walking away without giving a chance, because sometimes people don't know how to articulate how they feel and they don't understand what you're doing, and so they're afraid, and so fear can make people react a certain way. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I'm not sure if you want to. We can stay both on the mic. I think it's open to keep our mics open.
Yeah. The idea is, yeah, I like what you said specifically around you don't have to grow just because I grew. Right? I didn't grow to make you grow. I didn't grow because I need you to grow. I grew so I could be a better person for me and so that I could show up in this relationship with you as a better person also. If you choose to grow, great, I will love you. If you choose to not grow, great, I will love you. There is no difference in how I will show up for you or to you based on what you do. The difference in how I show up for you and to you is will be based entirely on what I do. What you do doesn't matter. Doesn't make a difference in how I show up for you. I will show up for you regardless of what you do with your life. That message is important. And if you can't give that message to your partner truly from your heart, you need a coach. Because that's what we do.
Yeah.
Right? We help people get that. Because that is, what's the point of personal growth? What's the point of growing if we can't show up for ourselves and our partner better? Ourselves first, but also our partner. We're not here to grow and then leave our partner. We're here to grow and be better for our partner. Right? So part of being better for our partner is allowing our partner to be whoever they are. And if we're the one with the growth, then we should be the one doing the allowing. Because they're going to have a harder time with that. We can assist them. We can, enable them. We can coddle them. We can do all of those things. And if they're not into the work, if they haven't done this work the way we have, they might have a harder time with it. We're the ones who've done the work. So we're the ones who are more capable of allowing them to be themselves and showing them how we want to be and letting them decide if they want to allow it or not. Yeah. Right? It's about we grow. And so, yeah, I love that. That's exactly what I think is the best, because it is about why we're doing it. Like if I'm growing so that my wife can become a better person, then stop growing, because that's not growth.
No. But now, and just so you know, we are definitely not saying that bad behavior is anything to accept. Right. Correct. But it's not about you doing the work so that they're better. Right. You do the work for yourself. That's what self-growth is all about. That's what self-love is all about. Yes. The word self is the first word. So that should be the indication. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, if I change. And so if you go into a relationship thinking that this person is this way, if you already go into a relationship and you know how someone is, and there's already something that you're already figuring out is a flaw, then and you think that you can fix it, you're going to be butting heads. You just are. But if you can, there's only one thing that you can control. There's really only one thing that you can make changes with, and that's yourself. And when you can make changes with yourself, because maybe that's where you need the growth, then you can attract that type of person into your life if you are not with somebody already, or you can maybe be a positive influence for the person who's already in your life to show them that this is possible for me and I feel really good. And maybe they want to do this, but they're unsure and they're feeling pressured. And if there's no pressure, then, people typically don't want to be pressured to do something. But when there is no pressure, they end up doing things on their own. Yeah. It's like, but you have to allow that space. And again, it's not about allowing for bad behavior. It's just allowing for, you're not judging them because they didn't take the same path as you. They didn't decide to go through a self-love or a self-growth journey. They didn't decide to do inner work. That was your choice. You made the decision to do it. And so you shouldn't really punish someone because they decided not to do, they're not doing it with you. And because if you didn't have that conversation with them and said, hey, let's do it together, but then you're halfway through a process and you're starting to feel better about yourself, and then you start to make them feel bad for not doing it with you, then then you're obviously not having that communication. And I think communication is key here. And then when you
Yeah.
can have that open communication where it's like really dialed in, I think that also will enhance the desire, because then you are,
Yes.
you know, the person wants to be with you. And
Yeah.
so, wow, I can't believe we actually filled an hour and some while we're over. But that's usual for Andy and I. And I'm
Yes,
sure
it is.
we could probably go on, but this was a great topic. It was fun. I really appreciated that you came here with an open mind about it too. And I'm glad though, even though we talked about external forces that have can define us. I really like that we got deeper into
Yeah.
the relationship aspect of it, because I think that's where a lot of people, like you said, they struggle with the whole defining of who's who in a relationship based on their actions. And it's like, just if you want to have a self growth, if you want to take a self growth path, that's amazing. A self growth, self development path, that's amazing. And if you want your significant other to do it with you, that's a conversation that you should do before you go along this path, because it's not really fair that you start something and then expect them to do it.
Yes.
But if you equally agree to go along this path, that's phenomenal, because then you guys can, support each other along the way. However, if you've done this already and you are seeking someone who's like that, then obviously you would look for those core values that match with yours.
Yes.
And if you've been with somebody who it's been a long time and they haven't gone through it, but you decided on your own and you just did it, and now you feel really good about yourself and you're showing up, it would be really great to have that conversation with your significant other to say, hey, I've been doing this and I feel really good. And the reason why is not because I'm trying to change you. It's because I want it to be a better person for myself, so that I show up as a better version of myself in this relationship. And that way there's no pressure on them, that there's no expectation that they need to be a certain thing that they have to, you're expecting that of them. So, but I appreciate this conversation. It was awesome. I don't know if you have any final thoughts.
It's a great transition into our next chapter. So this was the last video we're going to do for now on relationship expectations and relationship ideas. We're going to start next time into personal expectations, and we're going to talk about conversations around personal growth. So this was a great transition, because when you identify yourself based on somebody else's growth or lack of growth, maybe personal growth is what you're looking for. So let's talk about that. We'll get into a few of those conversations. I'm excited. Can't wait.
It's going to be fun. Well, thank you all. If you like this video, please make sure that you press like, and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on our lives. We go live twice a month, the second and fourth Thursdays of the month. So, and so next Thursday we will not be going live, obviously, because there were 5 Thursdays in September. So you will see us in October. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. We will be sure to get back to you. As always, it's been a pleasure, Andy. We will see you guys next time.
Thanks a lot, Leslie. It's been a great time talking with you. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye for now.